A look back at the life and career of Bud Adams would not be complete without revisiting what is one of the most talked about plays in football history. Here in Nashville, it's known as the Music City Miracle. Our friend Mike Keith, the host of Titans All Access, takes us down memory lane for this historical Titans playoff moment.
January 8, 2000. The Titans and the Bills in a playoff game at the Coliseum. Buffalo leads 16-15 with 16 seconds to go. And then, the most famous play in franchise history. Do the Titans have a miracle left in them in what has been a magical season to this point? If they do, they need it now. Christie kicks it high and short. Going to be fielded by Lorenzo Neal at the 25. Pitches it back to Wycheck. He throws it across the field to Dyson.
He's got something.
30,
He's
40,
got something.
50,
He's got it.
40,
He's got it.
20, 10.
He's got it.
End zone. Touchdown Titans. There are no flags on the field. It's a miracle. Tennessee has pulled a miracle. A miracle for the Titans. The Titans' Music City Miracle lifted them to a 22-16 victory over the Buffalo Bills. The greatest play in franchise history and one of the greatest plays in NFL history, the Music City Miracle.
Just another example of how the arrival of the Tennessee Titans helped to raise the enjoyment of sports fans for everyone here in our area. Mike will join us again later in the show with more on a special tribute coming this Sunday.
Well, certainly quite a play. Now, residents and football players in Nashville are not the only people who are reacting to Mr. Adams' death. Folks in Houston, where Bud Adams lived, are also talking about their feelings about the man and his legacy. As you might imagine, the feelings there are bittersweet. Reporter Ned Hibbert has more now from the Fox station in Houston.
That's at University of Kansas, Jayhawkers 1942. And you picked me out number 22.
Bud Adams started the Oilers in 1960 as part of the upstart American Football League. Here he is in 1962, lobbying for the Astrodome in a photo posted to Twitter by Bayou City History. The dome was built and Adams' Oilers moved in. Shortly thereafter, the AFL merged with the NFL, and Bud Adams took a chance on a quarterback named Dan Pastorini.
I'm grateful for Bud for bringing me to Houston, Texas, drafting me in 1971 and allowing me to play for the Houston Oilers. I mean, as a kid, I dreamt of playing professional sports, and he gave me that opportunity. For that, I'm grateful.
The Oilers had come up with a brand new head coach that nobody ever heard of, a good old boy named O.A. Bum Phillips.
But it wasn't until Adams hired this guy, Bum Phillips, as head coach, that his franchise really wormed its way into Houston's heart. The Love Ya Blue days of the late 1970s and early 80s, some consider the team's heyday. But as an owner, Bud Adams was a distant man, hard to get to know, says Pastorini.
The only time I ever saw him was during the contract negotiations, and that was about 3 times, or when he came into the locker room after wins.
We'll have the home field advantage, and in Houston, when we have that, we don't get beat.
It's ironic that Bud Adams died the very day early voting begins on a $217 million makeover for the Astrodome. The stadium Bud Adams had lobbied for soon proved to be inadequate. He wanted more seats, more luxury boxes, and he said he would move the team if he didn't get them. Harris County obliged, making room in the 80s by removing the famous Astrolight scoreboard. By the mid-90s, Adams was angling for a football-only stadium downtown. When he didn't get one, he made good on his pledge to relocate the Oilers to Tennessee.
It's a win-win situation for all of us, and we're going to keep it the terms confidential, so I'm not going to say much more than this.
But Oilers fans, they had plenty to say.
Oilers are some chumps. Let them go. We're going to get a better team. They never won a championship. Let them get out of here.
Nashville welcomed the team that would become the Titans, but for Houstonians, Bud Adams is mostly remembered for taking the Oilers and not creating them.
Of course, a lot of people in Houston did not like him because he moved away, but they have to understand it's a business with the NFL. Kind of misunderstood would be his legacy here.
That was Ned Hibbert reporting. Bud Adams was buried 1 week after he passed away, with current Tennessee Titans head coach Mike Munchak delivering the eulogy. Here is a part of what Munchak said at the funeral service.
Mr. Adams loved a challenge.
His excitement and passion for the game were clearly elevated when he was told that he couldn't do something. People said, that the AFL had no chance to survive. But Mr. Adams got involved, and Houston Oilers went on to win the 1960 and 61 AFL championship. It was also said to him that there was no way to compete with the NFL or to sign their players. But again, Mr. Adams proved them wrong. And the AFL ended emerging with the NFL in 1970 to make the league what it is today.
For more on the life and legacy of Tennessee's Titan, we're joined by a man who worked for Bud Adams for a quarter of a century. Titans Executive Vice President Don McLaughlin. Don, tell me about the first time you met Mr. Adams.
Paul, I met Mr. Adams in Houston in January of 1991. And at that point, I had the opportunity to be hired as Vice President of Marketing and Broadcasting. And I vividly remember going to his house, and he pulled up his pant leg, and he had the boots that went almost up to his knees, the nice cowboy boots. And he said, well, young man, he said, you better do a job for me. He says, because I can find people to do the job. At the end of the interview, I'll give you a chance, but don't you let me down. And I said, sir, I'll give it my best shot. And I've been fortunate to work for a great man for, as you say, almost a quarter of a century. And he's missed not only by me, but by a lot of people in the organization.
Mike Munchak talked about Bud Adams' competitive nature. Can you think of any anecdotes that sort of support that thought? He
was competitive, Paul. Mike can talk about on the field. Off the field, I can allude to so many meetings that I'd be in with him. And you're trying to position things and communicate with him and let him know how the organization was heading business-wise. And two things that I'll never forget. When we leave a conversation, and after a long conversation and trying to explain things, he may say one option was, I'll get back to you on that. Paul, if he was going to get back to you on that, that meant he was going to think on it, and the odds of you getting that accomplished were slim. One of the best feelings I've ever had, and I've told all the people that I work with the Titans for so many years, it was a great feeling when you'd hang up with him or conclude a meeting. And I'd have day-long meetings with him some days. I'd fly from Nashville to Houston and communicate with him from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. But when he'd end a meeting with, good deal, you were in pretty good shape. That was the way he'd end conversations a lot, and it was so fulfilling because he's a very demanding individual, yet it was a family business. And to be a part of that family business, anybody with the Titans is fortunate and honored to be in that situation. And good deal was something that would resound and carry over for quite some time.
He never moved to Middle Tennessee, but Don, it sure seemed like he had an affinity for this area, true?
He did. And Paul, there were often times that he'd come up here unbeknownst to other people. He just wanted to come and meet over at St. Thomas Sports Park. He'd stay at the Lowe's Hotel. He'd get involved and see Mayor Bredesen at the time, then Governor Bredesen, and he would come up here for more than just games. But he was a gentleman that didn't live for acclaim. He didn't live for the praise. He just wanted to do the right thing, and philanthropically he did, giving back via foundations and to the kids and to the community, and he loved Nashville.
And real quick, Tommy Smith, Bud's son-in-law, takes over day-to-day duties of this team. Are the Titans in good hands with Tommy?
Yes, Tommy. I've known Tommy for obviously a quarter of a century as well. He's our president and CEO. And Susie Smith and Amy Hunt, Mr. Adams' two daughters, as co-chairman, are very, very involved on a day-to-day basis. We've been communicating for years, Paul, and I think the transition will be smooth. But certainly Mr. Adams will be missed. He leaves a great legacy behind. And as a family, both Mr. Smith and Susie and Amy, myself and the rest of the organization, we want to continue to take this to the high standards that Mr. Adams has set for years.
Don, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Paul.
Appreciate the stories. Scott?
Well, speaking of good deals, one that Don was just talking about, with the decision to move the Titans/Oilers to Nashville, Bud Adams changed this city forever. In fact, city leaders, both past and present, agree that Adams had a huge impact on the growth in Nashville we have seen since they moved. Fox 17's John Dunn now to take a look at that part of the Adams legacy.
Bud Adams is a very important figure in the history of Nashville.
The team has redefined Sunday afternoons for many fans across Middle Tennessee.
Bringing the Titans to Nashville was an enormous event in the history of the city.
While Nashville has always been Music City, Mayor Carl Dean says Bud Adams' decision to bring a professional sports team here put Nashville on a different level.
Having a national football team here has had an incredible impact on the city in the terms of the way we look at ourselves, but also the way others look at us.
When the Houston Oilers began talking about a move to Tennessee, Bud Adams called up then Nashville Mayor Phil Bredesen. Bredesen was at first skeptical, but says Adams convinced him he was committed.
I found him an impeccable character. I mean, everything that he said while we were going through, a fairly difficult process to get that team here and the stadium built, everything he said was as good as his word, and I really admired the way that he did business.
Beyond the Titans, Adams has made significant contributions to local charities. Some have said that Adams has done more for Nashville than any other person who has not lived here.
He lived life on his own terms. He lived a long, very successful life, and that's worth celebrating.
He's got it! End zone!
Regardless if you're a football fan or not, it's hard to deny the impact that the Titans and Bud Adams have made.
He's the guy who elevated the city up to a major league city.
John Dunn, Fox 17 News.
No doubt about that. Now, Governor Haslam says that Bud Adams has made a huge difference in helping Nashville grow, and also said he's made a significant contribution to the state of Tennessee.
Up next, a look at how the Titans organization is doing as they prepare for the team's first home game since Adams' death.